It's r/malicious compliance time. Nothing like that frustrating moment when an entitled person tries to keep you from getting a coffee. Just no, Karen. Get your stock image shurikens ready to defend your coffee in this episode of VoiceyHere's Malicious Compliance. This story was called, "Why Are You Wearing a White Hat? You're Not a Supervisor?" So this story happened around 2003 or 2004. I was in the military working for a new boss who was afraid to look incompetent. I understand his position, but the equipment we were working on isn't used anywhere else in the world, so there's no reason he should have been self-conscious about it. Literally everybody posted into this job is starting from ignorance of the kit in question. For your knowledge, we are technicians. Our job is fixing electronics and performing third-line maintenance, board level, replacing components on equipment. The equipment we are working on are 1.5 metric ton cameras used to acquire telemetry information from our aircraft on bombing ranges. They're really old though, like they were installed in the late 60s. Due to this, we needed to start trialing a new system, so the government opened up contracts and a bid was won. We were finally going to get upgrades. At this point, I was an expert on the systems. Our boss went on a leadership course required when you reach his rank, and he dumped everything he had on his plate onto the lap of his second-in-command, who was understandably frustrated. I offered to take on the biggest projects so there would be less to do, and because I wanted to show I had the skills. He agreed, so I contacted all of the necessary people, PMed, supply, engineers and transport, in order to orchestrate the removal and disposal of these cameras. After 2 weeks of careful planning and research, we were ready to go. The 2IC grinned at me on the day of the move and says, "Grab the white hat. This is your project. You're in charge here." Beaming with pride, I grab the site supervisor hard hat, throw it on, and start the ball rolling. Everything is going well and according to plan. The dome housing the camera has been cut off, and the truck with the crane arm, HIAB, capable of lifting up to a metric ton is on site. I'm about to go dismantle the camera. They are capable of being split into 3 pieces, all weighing under a ton each, when my boss gets out to the range. It's his first day back at work after his course, qualifying him to be a leader for his troops. Instead of asking for a brief as to what's happening, or just letting it play out, he decides to puff out his chest and display his newfound levels of authority and command. Loudly, in front of everybody, he says, "Why the frick are you wearing a white hat? You aren't the MCPL!" Turning red with embarrassment, and not having much of a spine back then, I capitulate and apologize, attempting to stammer out that I was assigned this task. He cuts me off. "Whatever, take it off and get back to work." He exchanges hard hats with me and I'm wearing my yellow worker hat now. He's wearing the white side supervisor hat. Smugly content, he turns to me and says, "Carry on." Here's the malicious compliance bit. I'm the one who did all of the work. I know exactly what needs to be done next. As the person with all the information, the reason I was supervising it should be obvious. So I decided it was time for some malicious compliance. He wanted to embarrass me in front of everybody. Turnabout is fair play, my friend. I nodded and said, "No problem, boss. What do you want me to do?" He said, "Keep removing the camera." I'd love to. How do I do that? My vapid response came back. As you are the site supervisor, I'm awaiting your instructions on how to proceed. What exactly would you like me to do next, boss? He turned beet red as he realized this means he would have to publicly state that he, in effect, chewed me out for supervising the project I put together, as I should have been doing. He swore at me a bit and waved his hand saying, "Just finish the job," turning more red by the minute as higher ranking people caught on to what had just happened. So they started clustering around him asking pointed questions about the project and process. The absolute glee I felt when the range chief asked him where we were bringing the cameras, and the look on his face as he realized he was going to have to call over to me to answer the question was priceless. But not as priceless as the malicious gleam I caught in the chief's eye when he turned to me and said, "I understand, I've got your back." Sometimes power gets to people's heads, and just because somebody has the so-called authority to do something doesn't mean they're the most capable person to do it. So it's pretty sweet to see some revenge, where the person capable gets the upper hand. This story was called Angry Karen vs. Too Tired for Your BS Front Desk Clerk. Here's how a Karen attempted to forbid me from getting coffee at my job, and how I sent her horribly bleached wig flying. The joys of customer service. Here's some background. So I work at a club or fitness center that is located within a gated community, basically a breeding ground for Karens. Most people here are very entitled. I also happen to live in this community, but my mum and I rent and generally keep to ourselves and don't get involved in the drama. When you live in the community, a membership to the club where I work at, that has a pool, tennis court, gym, and dance studio, is included in the HOA dues. When you rent, like my mum and I do, the owner's membership is transferred to you. I work front desk juice bar, which means I greet members, send emails, basically keep the place together. I also prepare all of the complimentary snacks and drinks, and keep them filled throughout the day. The people are very annoying, but it's good money for a 16-year-old, and my boss and co-workers are great. Now back to Karen. It's about 8 AM on a Saturday, which means prime coffee time. My shift starts at 5:30 AM, so I am pretty tired and ready for a cup. I make all the coffee and complimentary food and drinks, so after I finish setting up, I usually have some. I have explicit permission from my boss to do so. Members of the club can have all the complimentary food and drinks they want, so everyone wins. Enter Karen. The giant canvas tote and terribly bleached Bob are telltale. I am standing at the counter, minding my own business, pouring a cup of coffee. Karen asks in such a shrill voice that it could probably break glass.
"Young lady, what do you think you're doing?"
Me, surprised. Getting coffee? Karen huffs.
"You can't do that."
Me, too tired for this bullcrap. Why not? Karen, determined to combat the apparent danger of a minimum wage employee getting coffee, shrieks,
"You aren't a member. You can't get coffee if you're not a member. Until then, no coffee for you."
I start to hatch my ever so devious plan. Cue Uno reverse card. I don't respond to Karen and walk over to the clock-in machine to punch out. Members have a PIN that they can enter into a keypad, so we can keep track of the number of people using the facilities. I walk over to the keypad, enter my PIN, and my name, and picture pops up on the monitor indicating that I am indeed a member. I then walk over to the bar, passing Karen, who looks like she is about to spontaneously combust with anger, to pick up my half cup of coffee and proceed to fill it from the coffee dispenser. I then walk back over to the clock-in machine, holding my coffee, and punch back in. I sit back down at the front desk and start working on entering payments. Karen is still standing by my desk, looking like she's about to have an aneurysm. I just ignore her until she proceeds to leave. The 20 cents I lost from clocking out for 2 minutes was worth the look of pure horror on Karen's face. Karens love being a member of something, because it means that they have some sort of exclusive right that other people don't have. It makes them special. And of course, any chance they get to wave that in front of someone else's face, that's what they're going to do. So for it to backfire on them is probably the worst thing that could possibly happen to them. To realize that maybe you're not so special. This story was called "Try to Make Me a Crappy Game?" We will see about that. So this was many moons ago, but I thought it would be a good one to tell here. So I was at Walmart looking at Xbox games. Yes, the original Xbox. But I wasn't sure which one I wanted to get. I was looking at a racing game called Sega GT 2002, but wasn't sure if it was any good. Instead of buying it on the spot, I decided I was going to leave the store and just rent it from Blockbuster for the night. Yeah, I told you this was a while ago. To try it out and see if it was worth buying. As I was leaving, I had an idea and asked the cashier if I got a game, and it was not really what I wanted, if it's okay to return it for a refund. I was told by the cashier that as long as I kept my receipt and was within the return window, it wouldn't be an issue to return the game if I didn't like it. So rather than waste the money on the rental to try it out, I decided to buy it and just take it back if it wasn't the game I wanted. So I paid for the game and went home to try it out. Played it for a couple of hours, and it wasn't great, but it was alright. My buddy came over and saw the new game and said he actually has 2 copies of the game, and would give me one for free. So after that offer, it was clear what I was going to do. I went back to Walmart to return the game and get my money back. It was the same day, but the guy I spoke to before didn't seem to be around when I went back in. I waited in line until it was my turn and explained that I just got this game and that I didn't like it and wanted to return it for a refund. I was now told by the new cashier that since the game was opened, I couldn't get a refund, I could only exchange it for a copy of the same game. I explained that this is not what I was told when I was in the store before buying the game, but the cashier said that they couldn't give the money back. After a few minutes of arguing, I had an idea. I confirmed with the rep that it was okay if I exchanged the game for a new copy, and he said yes, that is something he could assist with. So, I exchanged the game for a new copy, still in the wrapper. I walked out of the store and then immediately back in, and walked up to the same cashier and said, I have an unopened copy of an Xbox game. I would like to return for a full refund. The look on his face was priceless. Needless to say, I got my money back and got the free copy from my friend. I don't think I even played the game again after, so I'm glad I got my money back. There's usually a solution if you look hard enough. And fortunately for the hero of our story, they found a solution. It really isn't fair if one cashier tells you one thing and then another one tells you another, especially if you're buying it on the premise that, oh, I can return this if I want to. I don't know if you'd call it fraud exactly, but if a cashier told you could return it on a particular condition, you should have the right to return it. It's just really hard to prove, I guess. This story was called, What? I Cannot Hear You. I started a brand new job at a resort, somewhere USA. I look at the reviews and they had some dire warnings, but I worked in some pretty wild places before, so I sign up prepared. I don't expect to stay for long. I show up to work as a maintenance man. My new boss gives me a tour and a radio. He calls me on this radio. I call him back. I held the button for maybe 3 seconds before I started speaking. He didn't answer. So I called again. Nothing. Well, later he confronts me and tells me that he hasn't heard me respond on the radio. So I tell him that I called. He told me to hold the button down for 1 second before speaking. From here on out, I knew this would be a long job. Later that day, he calls on the radio again. So I hold the button down for 1 second, instead of the 3 I did before. Respond and hear the radio sound like he just pushed the button down and lifted it without talking. I respond again his radio sounds. We tag back and forth like this for 9 times. He was ticked, but I was already enjoying my first day. Every morning to date for 4 months now, he gets on his radio and makes the sound like he isn't holding the button down on his radio long enough for his radio to pick up his voice. One of the maintenance guys usually calls on the radio. Hey boss, were you calling me? He will respond. So, I talk to the night shift worker who I'm supposed to replace. Well, he tells me that over the past 2 years, our beloved boss has bestowed the night position, one man, with increasing amounts of nightly, weekly, and monthly duties. Our dear boss also had the fortune of gifting increasing amounts of projects. Like have one man paint an entire fire truck with 2 coats of paint in one night. Maybe it would be possible to put 1 coat of paint on a fire truck if we didn't have 6 hours of regular duties on an 8-hour shift. However, our boss has some strange sense of time that no one can seem to figure out. So, of course, to compound the radio issue, we painted this truck in the noisy generator room to make it hard to hear the radio. Not that we know who he is calling for on the radio anyway. So then, our boss got tired of seeing both of the night shift workers driving around one golf cart. He told us that we need to split up our duties and drive 2 different golf carts. Now, I know for a fact that when we do any regular duty X or project Y, when we both do it, our time gets cut in half. Even if I'm fixing a leaky pipe, my partner can save a lot of time fetching parts and tools. I literally timed the duties we do, both together and apart, with my watch, and I know we accomplish the same amount of work either way. So now we both drive 2 golf carts to the same places at the same times. We split fixing pipes into 2 duties, fixing and fetching. We split inspecting fire extinguishers into 2 parts. I look at the height off the ground, look for rust, and he will see if it is sealed and has the right pressure. In fact, every task we do has been broken down such that we work together. Then our boss wanted us to break up our co-workers' parties in employee housing. He wanted us to take pictures of anyone partying at night. He wanted us to patrol the area and look for partiers every night. Now, if you don't know, this is a great way to anger your co-workers. Angry co-workers can make your life miserable at work. So we drive by, wave kindly at the 10 people drinking beer on the deck at 2 AM, and we often chat with them. I usually turn to my co-worker in the second golf cart and ask him, "Hey, does this look like a party to you?" He usually says, "Nope." Then we move on. If we get a noise complaint, we kindly ask the partiers to take it to the employee recreation building. When we take pictures, we smudge some dirt on our cameras and take them from too far away to identify anyone. When our boss asks about the partiers at 2 AM, we will say, "We didn't see them at midnight when we drove by." Anyway, our boss has dreamed up many ingenious ways of shooting himself in the foot, alienating or angering his workers, damaging his workers' reputations behind their backs, and much more. But these are just some of the ways his workers unite to maliciously comply. I suppose upper management doesn't want to get rid of him, because few people are willing to do this job. Our boss would love to leave, but no one will hire him elsewhere. He told me this last part directly. Well, see, they were technically doing everything the boss was asking. Sure, we'll take photos, we'll report any parties, if we see what we think looks like a party. The thing is, people don't want to be controlled, or forced to do something that they don't want to do. So, if there's a way to get around it, they're going to find it. This story was called, "Who Needs Test Equipment? I'm the Boss. I can fix it by touch." So this is the same guy from the story with the white hat. I'm just a lowly corporal and he's my supervisor. The year is either 2003 or 2004. It was a long time ago, but it was definitely one of those two, and it's summer. The equipment we work on are called theodolites. They're big ride-on cameras that weigh 1,440 kilograms, like 90,000 pounds or something in American. Seriously, they weigh around 3,168 pounds each. They're housed inside fiberglass domes that protect them from the elements, and they're used for data acquisition with respect to air weapon systems. My buddy and I are working on a dome controller, which is basically just a motor that's synchronized to the servos inside the camera, so that when the camera turns, the dome turns with it, so the camera can keep pointing out the opening of the aircraft. We've been working on this particular dome controller for a couple of hours, and we think we have the fault narrowed down. Enter my new boss on his first day of the job. He strolls into the door of the shop, which is right beside where my buddy and I are working. He introduces himself to us, and asks what we're working on. I fill him in, letting him know that it's a dome controller, which is why it's over by the door. The only place in the shop we have 3-phase power. I explain it briefly and he nods sagely, before confidently stating,
"I'm pretty sure it's just your current limiter."
Now, this is a unique technology in that it's old, from the late 60s, and much of it has been entirely replaced over the years as components are swapped out. It's altogether possible he's worked on something similar, but these are unique pieces of kit. I comment, "The problem isn't the current, the problem is that it's lagging behind synchros by about a second. I don't think the relay is engaging in time," which I think points to an issue in the timing circuits. Ignoring this, he says,
"I've got a ton of experience working on equipment like this. I know what I'm doing."
Time for some malicious compliance. I comply and step back to let the professional at it. He doesn't even bother hooking up a multimeter, but instead starts turning pots randomly. A pot is a potentiometer, which for the non-tech savvy here means he's basically messing with the internal tuning of the system. Potentiometers are variable resistors that control how much current is flowing through a system. Dimmer switches are an example of them in action. Now imagine somebody started just randomly turning several of them inside a system that deals with high current moving hundreds of pounds of fiberglass, and then picture what happened when he turned it on to see what would happen. The main transformer caught on fire from the current overload. It was a 13-lead transformer that was basically the brains of everything happening in the controller. And the best part? The company that made it went out of business 3 years before I was even born. When the sergeant asked us what the heck had happened, I pointed out that his newly promoted Master Corporal had decided to show us how to repair something we were already experts at by setting it on fire. We had to custom order a 13 lead transformer from a company, and the Master Corporal never touched my equipment again. Sometimes the best way to teach someone a lesson is to give them exactly what they want. If you try and fight them, they'll only get defensive, and they'll perhaps never learn. If you actually let them go ahead and make the mistakes, well, then hopefully they've embarrassed themselves enough that they'll never want to do it again. If you'd like your story to be narrated by me, don't forget to visit the subreddit r/VoiceyHere, link below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.